Good afternoon everyone and welcome to the 1:30 session. I'm glad my audience today understands that the well-being and future of people like myself depends upon the best education possible. I am told that the usual school reforms do not deliver the change students need to see in their classrooms. At my school we have managed to break through that barrier and give me the high standards needed in tomorrow's world, my world. At Riverside Christian College, I use, my teachers use, an assemble of tools that make for a world-class learning. I started at Riverside in 2013, 3 years after Mr. Taylor. His job is to make my education world-class. He has taught and led schools in New South Wales, the Northern Territory, and now in Queensland. He's a tragic cricket fan and loves the music of Midnight Oil. Please welcome to the stage, Mr. Stuart Taylor.
Well, thanks for coming along today, and please interrupt with questions, even though that's probably a bit difficult, but just put your hand up as if in class, I suppose. I would like to introduce my co-presenters. So you've heard from Ebony, who's in Year 10, but sitting next to her is Claire in Year 9 and Curtis in Year 9, and you'll be hearing from them in a moment. Riverside Christian College is 3 hours north by car from here and about a half an hour in from the coastline. And I want to tell you our story today because I think that all educational worlds are better understood by your story rubbing up against our story, a bit like iron sharpens iron. And I think you'll find that our story is a little propositional. I think that you'll find that there might be some ways you need to consider how your story at your school continues to unfold. Ours, though, is not an easy story. Riverside is situated in Maryborough, a typical nice, mid-20,000s regional Queensland town. But we unfortunately have the second highest rate of disadvantage in Queensland. Our youth unemployment ranks around 5, 6 or 7 for the nation year after year. We have a receding tide of employers leaving our town since I started there in 2010. Our drug rate, last week in the paper we found out has tripled in the last 3 years. My school has its 3rd teenage pregnancy so far this year. Marry Your Brother is a place of low expectations where welfare is genuinely a viable option. And from just purely a socio-economic standpoint, there's little comfort for a bold and ambitious academic agenda. Coupled with the environment the school is in is the fact in 2006 we went from 120 students to 50. We had the potential, if you've got anything with finances at school, you'll know that's the death knell for bankruptcy, but at one point during that period we had 8 weeks' wages left before we were well and truly bankrupt. Over that period, half the staff left because the rats realised the ship was sinking. And typically what happens to a small independent school at that point is another school swoops in, buys the assets and takes you over, or by just sheer will of force, through moral imperative, you rise like the phoenix from the ashes. That's where we should have been, by the way. We were in the middle of a perfect storm. And we did indeed rise from the ashes. Thanks to 4 non-negotiable components to our school reform process. Riverside now is a prosperous, exceptionally well-resourced school of 750 day students, quite a large school for a small population. On top of that, we have another 350 distance education students. And despite that low SES, we are now getting high academic achievement. We are value adding nicely to our base of SES. I see that month after month in our internal literacy testing, where I can see students tracking in their reading at an accelerated rate now. We're starting to see it in our Year 7 and 9 NAPLAN results, and our Year 12 exit folios last year were exceptional. They outstripped the state. How does that happen? How do you go from a perfect storm to the heights, so to speak, that we are now? Part of the answer, or in fact probably a lot of the answer, is our current head of school operations took over the principalship at that point, and through some funding to take him around Australia and some school funding to take him literally around the world. He spent a couple of years, all his holidays, travelling the world, embedding himself in education around the world. He was after the DC3 answer to education. He was hunting for best practice. And I suppose, why do we call it the DC3 answer? The DC3 ushered in the new era, the era we have now, of international commercial flight. And it did that transformation, because the DC3 apparently, I'm no aviator, but apparently it has 5 components. It has a variable pitch propeller, retractable landing, lightweight construction, air-cooled engine and flaps. Those 5 things together have the synergy to change flight at that time. One item less and you have more of the same. No transformation. It will just be change for change's sake. So Riverside was in search for the DC3 answer. What are the non-negotiable components of world-class learning? We came up with what we thought that was and began implementing it in 2011, 2012, but realistically this is about our second year of implementing it because we're feeling a little confident with what we're doing. And I suppose it stands to reason, because as you read about change, you know that sustained engagement is needed over years to make conceptual changes. And the rest of the time this afternoon I want to talk about what does that reform look like. What does the Riverside DC3 look like? I'm pressing the wrong button. There we go. There are 2 cornerstones to what we do. So with the storm about to engulf us, we went from far out to there are 2 things, philosophy and focus. We are student-driven philosophy and we are data-informed, our focus. And our philosophical centrepiece is that what we do, education, is for the benefit of students. Our energy and resources are to serve them, not government, not parents, not ourselves. In the end, the kids deserve the best. And we say that students can all achieve high standards. We see that teachers can all teach to high standards. And as we move to the show and tell phase, I hope you see how we support teachers to be expert in a process, not content, and students to be expert in learning. Our philosophical commitment to high expectations places kids at the centre. And our second one, focus, which we also call precision, is also about the kids. We are very happy to be considered data-driven. It's a bit of a dirty word of late, but we understand data to be intensely human. It's not abstract, it's not ill-understood numbers, it's deeply personal. It's visceral. We're talking about little human lives here, and we need to describe them well so that every teacher knows each one, precisely knows each one. And we do that through ongoing data collection. But it's decision-driven data collection. It's easy to drown in a sea of meaningless numbers. So we want to measure what matters, and we search for precise data, for data that is diagnostic in nature. This is our first data wall. We've had it for a few years now, and it just tracks the reading that I spoke about a little while ago. It's a standardised test in reading called DRA. But the precision is that for reading comprehension, there are 6 lines of data. For oral fluency, there's 4 lines of data. For reading engagement, another 2 lines. And that wall has sharpened our focus and professional thinking week after week through our PLCs that we'll touch on a little later. And now we obviously have some other more standard measures of how kids do in writing and the like. But we also do, like we all do, a lot of assessment for learning, that formative assessment, constantly checking for understanding so that I know precisely my child and that child and the next child. And quite nicely also, what strategies of mine are and aren't working in the classroom. I'm not sure if you heard of the Australian Learning Lecture. I followed it on Twitter and I really like this particular tweet, they were summarising Sir Michael Barber's hour-long lecture, which is a lot about data. If we secretly fear data, it will affect how we operate. Let's be joyful about impact, excited about knowledge, thrilled by data. And I'm going to flick through quite a few slides here of how we be precise and collect information on kids. And in questions, if you want to go back to it, we certainly can. So our philosophy, high expectations, our focus is precision, knowing each child well, and personalisation comes next. The data gives us, as I said, a diagnostic picture of kids, and that drives our instructional focus. Precision gives us what the child can do, the zone of proximal development. Personalisation gives us how to move the child on, the gradual release of responsibility. So personalisation deals with what are the best tools to hit the target of need in the student? What are the evidence-based teaching methods that will have the largest effect size? What are the high-yield strategies? And here's where I think teaching becomes truly professional, because you become the learning designer. You know, you're not the sage on the stage, you're not the guide on the side, but a highly expert activator of learning. To connect those two things of precision and personalisation, there's some pathway tools we use because kids need a clear idea of what success is. These tools are needed to activate the learning, and my co-presenters are the guys who'll talk about these. They are engaged with these all the time. We're going to talk about learning goals, exemplars, and success criteria. Learning goals are used in each lesson or series of lessons so that students clearly know what's expected of them. And Curtis, who's in Year 11, is going to talk to you a little bit more from the student perspective.
A learning goal is a statement that gives students a clear and directional outline for the task. They give students something to aim towards, so they know they are learning the correct things. Learning goals help students to sequence assessment tasks. A clear learning goal also helps students to identify the success criteria. At school, I use learning goals at least once a week. I use them in all of my subjects, some more than others. I use learning goals the most in maths. In Maths B, we have an entire wall dedicated to learning goals, which are all colour-coded. Maths B is a fast-paced course with lots of units to cover. Because of this, it can be easy to get behind. Learning goals help me to make sure that I'm studying the right things for the next exam. In English, when we study text, the teacher writes up the learning goals on the board so that we understand what aspects of the text to study. Learning goals can be used for one lesson or an entire unit. This can be structured as one core learning goal with sub-learning goals for different topics, or one learning goal per individual class lesson. But learning goals are not limited to Year 11 core OP subjects, but are helpful in elective subjects as well. Many students have said that learning goals help them in subjects such as drama, art and industrial graphics. Many students from SAS classes and OP classes have both said that learning goals have helped. Students from primary school to senior school all use learning goals throughout their learning experience at Riverside. Learning goals not only help students, but can also be useful for teachers. A learning goal can help a teacher stay focused on what they are teaching and not get sidetracked. I surveyed 20 Year 11 students, and 65% of them said they had used learning goals during their day. And out of these students, 1/3 of them said that out of learning goals, exemplars and success criteria, they found learning goals the most helpful, which goes to show that students' learning preferences are evenly strewed, and therefore teaching methods must be diverse to reach all students.
Thank you very much, Curtis. One of the things about learning goals I think we've learned over the last 2 years is that they need to be deconstructed. So we talk about learning goals need to be deconstructed with kids. Exemplars are used to show what once again we can go through what they look like around little school. There we go. Exemplars are used to show what A-level work looks like. and it's an obvious place to see high-level expectations in action. Ebony's in Year 10, and she's going to tell you a little bit more from the student perspective.
Exemplars are examples of work completed by previous students from previous years. They are used in every class along with learning goals and success criteria. I surveyed a large amount of senior students and they said that exemplars help a large proportion of the student body every day. They show you what an A-level standard is instead of just describing it to you. If you're like me and a little bit more of a visual learner and stress a little bit more over assignments, then exemplars are the best thing that a teacher can give to you. If in English the exemplar was of a short story, the teacher might deconstruct it and note that the metaphors, similes and personification were on point and correct, that it was within the word limit and in a range of words we used instead of repeating the word said, for example. Exemplars can show you the difference between a B and an A in a very clear and concise way. The deconstructing of an exemplar helps students to understand what they need to do to achieve a high mark. Exemplars may also help you notice what areas you need to work on whilst completing your assignment. An exemplar will come in handy if you're doing an exceptionally hard assignment and you've missed a lesson or not quite understood what the teacher was talking about. You can refer to the exemplar and notice what's being said in the paragraph and use it to refer to your own work.
Thanks, Ebony. Once again, if we need to go back to these question time, we certainly can. Success criteria are used to support students as they move towards the high levels of achievement. Sometimes you see some people using pre-flight checklists, similar but not the same. We use success criteria throughout the learning process, not just at the end. Claire is in Year 9 and she's going to tell you a little bit more from her perspective.
A success criteria is basically the same as the original criteria, but it's worded in a way that will help the students understand it better. So recently I handed out a small survey about the success criteria, learning goals and exemplars. What I got back from that is about 9 out of 15 people found the success criteria more useful and easy to follow. I would have to agree with them because the whole process of creating the success criteria makes it a lot easier to follow and understand the assessment. For example, in English, one of the classes we use the success criteria a lot in, the teacher usually gets us all to come down to the back of the classroom with our marking criteria and assessment sheet to deconstruct the original assessment criteria in a way that we can understand. Because usually the original version is written in a way that a lot of us wouldn't understand. After we've simplified the criteria and put it in our own words, our teacher writes down about 5 to 10 points on a piece of cardboard or butcher's paper and puts it on our wall so we can constantly refer back to it if we need to know what we're doing or if we need an idea. When we're changing the criteria, we usually look in the A grade section, so that way we are aiming higher than average. The success criteria is really useful because it gives us a clear view of what we need to do continuously throughout the time we have our assignment. It's like a checklist that you can look to check what else you need to do or what you've already done. We definitely use it at the end of the assignment because that's when we double check we've got everything we need for a good mark. Overall, I think the success criteria are a real help to our learning.
Thank you, Claire. I wouldn't mind us having this quick video. So Year 6 are now getting pretty funky with their success criteria, and they've produced this little, well, 2 of the boys have produced this little video about their limerick.
I know I am successful in writing a limerick when the limerick has 5 lines. When lines 1, 2 and 5 rhyme, and also when lines 3 and 4 rhyme. I also know I am successful when lines 1, 2, and 5 are longer than lines 3 and 4. All of these things help the limerick flow. Something I would add in the future to my success criteria for writing limericks is that grammar is important, so the limerick makes sense. Something I wouldn't add next time to my success criteria is punctuation, as I learned that it is optional for successful limerick writing.
Now that child in year 6 normally will go to year 7 or 8 and do limericks again and forget all about it. But I can guarantee you those boys in year 6 will now remember that not only the structure of the limerick, but how to continually improve it. And I think that's the power of learning goals, exemplars and success criteria. You've seen it in our presenters, my co-presenters. But you see kids slowly turning the tables on teachers. Lily is a year 12 student, and she recently went to her film teacher and said, I want to see my year 11 profile sheet, please. In Queensland, it's just a single piece of paper. It'll have the syllabus criteria down there, across the 8 or so assignments for that year, and there'll be marks about how she did with each assignment and each criteria. She wanted to know where her learning focus area should be for that year. She knew that if she was weak in a particular criteria, that's what she needed to focus on. She knew if it was a particular sort of assessment piece, that was it. See, Lily was reversing the roles. Instead of the teacher holding her accountable, Lily was now holding Mr. White accountable. And how much time? Okay. Let me move through these. 2. So in the senior school, our art teacher has constructed her website around learning goals, exemplars and success criteria. Then from there, some of those bounce into the walls in her classroom. So she's got the learning goal, the success criteria, and underneath the sheets, which are the term overview, with the QR codes to send them straight back to the website where the exemplars are housed. Some of our students, that's a year 12 student, will then put up the marking rubric for the year is there with the QR codes about how to understand each of the criteria in the syllabus, and underneath the current task, which down the bottom it talks about the marking criteria, which will have the learning goals and success criteria for how it is you get the A-level work. Our Maths B class, so on the board they would have had their learning goals there. You'll see the worked examples to better understand what they are. The place after that using Padlet is in the next lesson they will together start commenting on it to come up together with a common understanding, the success criteria for each of those learning goals. They use Padlet to get there, so it can stay there as an ongoing learning artefact. We have wikis for legal studies, which will see the learning goals and the criteria. Wiki for English, which will see as the learning goals and the success criteria. And as you go into it, I've got exemplars of what good work looks like. Sometimes it's on the walls. The physics one's interesting. They use Mathematica, and each of the little grey triangles on Mathematica, if you press on it, will then give you what's hidden beneath that area. So what the unit's about. The learning goals there you'll see are where am I going? The success criteria, he talks about how are you going with that. And if you click on the little triangle under a learning goal, you'll see this. So the learning goals there, the success criteria, how to nail that learning goal. Because as you nail the learning goal, you'll without a doubt nail the assessment piece. And as always, the physics teacher has to have like a 3D manipulative object to play with in his. As we go through learning goals, success criteria and exemplars, you need the constant assessment for learning, the constant frequent checks for understanding. In dance, we've got down the left-hand side there the syllabus criteria, and how do you know whether you're getting it or not? And kids can say whether, yeah, don't really know, I'm in the red zone at the moment, or I'm okay. You might be halfway through the unit, hopefully, when they're at that, but certainly by the end you want everyone in the green zone nailing it. And when you fill it out, you fill out your personal learning targets, what you're going to do to improve. You might flick through the other examples. And in the end, it's those students with those tools can reflect on what they're learning, how they're going, how do you know that you're going that well, how you're going to improve, and how you're going to get help. I love where Word put the little green squiggles for the teachers though. It's because of deconstructing, co-constructing, embedding, it's setting the goals and creating the artefacts. And certainly, I don't want you to go away thinking the learning goal success criteria and exemplars are just to chart a course of where to go, because what we're finding is that to turn the tables like Lily did in Year 12, students need to use it as a reflective tool as they learn. And we're trying to figure out how to force that routine reflection so they refine and redraft and improve at all points. So we have some posters that we developed last year that we're probably going to start using in the second half of this year, which are just getting kids to ask questions of their learning. Where am I going? The I know phase. You know, I know what I'm trying to achieve because I've looked at the learning goal, the exemplars, and the success criteria. The I can phase. How am I going? As I'm going through it, how am I going? I can celebrate my achievements. This is the question I repeatedly ask throughout the unit. And the third question, where to next? And you'll recognise them all from John Hattie. The I will phase. You know, I'm going to goal set. Because I've asked those questions, I will goal set, and it's the question that makes me better. All of this, and I didn't think we'd get up to this point, but we have, is the professional practice of teachers. It's the fourth piece. So we've had the philosophy, which is moral purpose. We've had the focus, which is the precision. We've talked about personalisation, and the fourth P of our reform package of the non-negotiable elements is professional practice. You need to support, you need to grow teachers as they deliver this. We have professional learning communities. Everyone's involved in one every second week, and they run around the 40-45 minutes with a pretty strict agenda of will this improve achievement and how can that be verified. So if you've got something which you can't convince us will improve the achievement of that child, then it won't get a Guernsey. If you've got something that we all think, yes, that probably will work, but we can't, through some data collection of evidence-based assessment, figure out whether it's working or not. That's something for you to do as an individual practitioner and come back to us about, but it's not something for the group to do. And it really is job-embedded PD. And it's, I learn in and through the practice of teaching. Because I'm focusing in a PLC on precision and I'm focusing on personalisation, it is enormous. I love our PLCs. And we're celebrating them. Everyone has teaching teams. Our learning walk, we've got about 2 minutes. Learning walks, I think, are the more profound thing we've done in the last year. A teacher gets a clear idea of good learning basically by standing in front of a room, walking around a room, watching themselves somehow and talking to kids. A learning walk is where the guy in the picture here is a senior PE teacher in a Year 8 class. That would have been one of 3 classrooms he went to. He'd go to those classrooms with the specific instruction of you're not looking at teaching, you're looking at learning, talk to the kids. And as you start talking to the kids about how they're learning in that class, you reflect on your own practice in your own classrooms. And I think, what was his name? John Searle said, if you can't say it clearly, you don't understand it. And I think for us teachers, if you can't develop a mental picture of what great learning looks like in action, you don't know what it is. And the learning walks have done that. There's reflection sheets we do with it. We had a teach meet recently up where we are, and some people tweeted about what they think about it too. A great way to see learning in action, the best place to see it. The teaching practice showcases spring out of the learning walks. People come back all excited. You should see, Jacques doing his Aztecs tweeting. You should see Larry doing the Kagan strategies. You should see Tonya with Evernote. And we draw them all together for a couple of afternoons, and you choose out of a smorgasbord of 10 different practitioners, a couple of people to learn from. I've just run out of time, which is a shame, because I'm going to go over time. The annual learning plan is appraisals. We now have just started videoing practice once a year. And in essence, it's just a learning walk in your own classroom. ISQ recently had Jim Knight. I wish I was there talking about that. Deeply profound. Give it a whirl as you do a presentation like I've done, and you'll see how valuable it is. 30 minutes is up, and I'm a timely man. So, do you have any questions from the floor? Excellent. If you think of one in a moment, please come and see me or my co-presenters. We will be at the after drinks because they're co-students of the band performing for you tonight and giving you some music. So rock up, say good day. Thanks for your time, and yes, I will finish on the final, that one. All the components put together. Thanks everyone.